Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. Here you will learn all things related to healing from divorce, mind, body, and spirit, so you can create a beautiful new life filled with happiness. I'm Rachel Ruby, author of Divorce to Bliss, divorce coach, speaker, and attorney, and I'm so glad you found me here. Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. I'm Rachel Ruby, and today we're going to be talking about why women need other women when they are going through the healing process from divorce. And my guest today is Jen Broyles. She is a transformational women's health coach and breathwork guide who supports people in releasing anxiety, stress, and limiting thought patterns so they can activate confidence, healing, and peace. She blends a variety of healing modalities, including breathwork, neurosomatic techniques, mindset training, holistic nutrition, spirituality, and plant therapies to guide people through the ultimate transformation experience. So I want to give a big warm welcome to Jen. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So let's kind of get started and talk with a general question. And I'd love for you to tell us why women need the companionship and support of other women in life, especially when it comes to going through a difficult experience.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, in my experience, I found that women really need each other, especially during a life-altering transition, such as divorce, because women tend to understand each other on a deep level. We've got this quite intuitive ability to really relate. And I feel like there's between women a shared language of emotion, resilience, presence that really exists in female friendship. And so when we're going through something that may shake our identity or our sense of worth, like the end of a marriage, having other women around and the right people, the right women that know how to show up for you, how to be there for you, how to hold space for you. I think that's one of the big things. It's just simply holding space without judgment, without trying to quote unquote fix things can be incredibly grounding. And for me, it's a reminder that I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And that is incredibly refreshing to know that you're not alone. You're not broken. And there's life on the other side of a difficult situation.
You talked a little bit already about some of the benefits of female friendships, but can you address maybe some of the mental benefits and maybe physical benefits like better health and how that might play into it when you have that support, that strong feminine support network?
Yeah, well, having a supportive network in general, and I think that comes oftentimes with that feminine relatability, that deeper level of support. It's incredibly healing and grounding for our nervous system. So if we want to talk on like a more physical health level, just having those relationships in our life, so we feel supported, we don't feel isolated. When we feel like there's at least someone that we can talk to and feel seen and heard and held and nurtured and loved, that is incredibly calming for our nervous system. So it helps to regulate our nervous system. And, if we're going through something difficult or challenging, oftentimes our stress levels are even higher than maybe normal. And to speak from a normal standpoint, most people are already under chronic stress, right? In their day to day. Yeah. So if we're going through something that is pretty challenging or traumatic or difficult, and we're dealing with a lot of uncomfortable emotions, then really having ways to support our nervous system is going to be essential. And being in really connected, loving, authentic relationship is one of those ways that we can feel held and start to bring a relaxation and a grounding and a calm to our nervous system, so we can get out of fight or flight and into a more relaxed and healing state of our nervous system. So that's going to benefit our health, ideally help promote better sleep as well. All of these are essentials to like optimal health. And so when we have that bond with another person or a group of people, that is going to really support. So, the nervous system, reducing anxiety, improving your immunity, improving your sleep. And I'd say one of the biggest things for me is when I'm in those supportive networks and communities, where I do feel witnessed and that I feel safe to share without feeling judged or afraid that I'm going to be judged, that feeling seen, heard and understood and just witnessed is so, so powerful, especially when we're going through a messy situation. When I was going through my divorce, a friend of mine called it the messy middle. And that's exactly what it was, because I felt like a total mess. Like my life was a mess. And I had friends like her to just hold me in that and relate and say, I've been there. You're in the messy middle and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. It's true for me as well. And it really does make a big difference. I know you work with some men too. And so how would you describe, I mean, I can describe it, but I'd love to hear how you would describe the difference between, let's say, two women or more than, two women connecting on a deep level to support each other while going through something versus men, and how they're different in those, how they're different in how they support each other.
Yeah. And that's a really good question. And I mean, I think both can be supportive in their own way, right?
Yeah,
the masculine and the feminine, and all of us embody both energies. Even if you are a female, you've got some masculine energy, males have feminine energy, and it's finding that healthy expression of it. Right. But just what I've seen in my work with clients and in my personal relationships is that the masculine does tend to be more structured and step by step, and how do we fix this, right? Like they want to fix, they want to solve, they want to be the solution provider. And that's oftentimes not what we need. Yeah. Oftentimes that's not what we need. We, as women, sometimes we just want to be emotional. Sometimes we just want to verbally process a situation, right? And again, it goes back to just being witnessed. Like women don't even need a response from another person. We just want to be heard. And the last thing we want is for someone to try to fix it, because many times that's not what we're asking for. We just want someone to listen to us. And when someone is trying to fix it or solve the problem or offer a solution or offer advice when we didn't ask for it, then that oftentimes brings up, not feeling seen and heard, but sometimes also guilt and judgment and just feeling worse off than we did before. So I think just having that commonality between women who are oftentimes a little more emotionally open and vulnerable and can create an intimate, safe space and hold space is really supportive.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I giggled earlier because, in my marriage and I hate to say that was one of the issues, because I think, like you said, men and women tend to look at a problem, the same problem from different perspectives, which is great. And sometimes you want someone to come in and fix it. Yeah. But as women, when we are feeling overburdened, overwhelmed, when we are under pressure, when we are sad, sometimes we just need someone to put their arm around us and just not say anything and just tell us it'll be okay, and just hug us and hold us and, love us. And, it's interesting because, I have guy friends. I've had guy friends for many years, and, they know me well enough now that when I call and I say, hey, I'm feeling down, blah, 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 they don't say like, well, they don't try to fix it. They just, and it's great, because I think when you are in relationship with like my partner, I can just say to him, hey, I just need you to just listen. And he's really good at that. Yeah. So men can definitely do that. You just have to always tell them what you need, just like they have to tell you what they need. And we, in a relationship, we need to communicate and we need to express ourselves and say what we need. So I think it's really interesting, though, in healing to look at these dynamics between women, because I know some of my clients will get together with other friends and just sit and cry together. And men usually don't do that kind of thing, right? So they're like, oh, let's go and get a beer and, shoot some pool or whatever. So it's just a different way of coping and of getting out of that high stress level. So
it is. Yeah. And I think you nailed it when you said it's communicating what we need, because like you, I have male friends that know how to hold space like that.
Yeah.
They're really good at that. I've got female friends that are going to immediately try to fix something,
Yes,
and so
yes,
it's a very blanket statement that I said between male and female, but that is a very common difference. And then just communicating, this is what I need right now. Like, can you just, sit there with me and cry, or tell me a funny joke to make me laugh, or just hear me, or let me vent. Like, I went through a leadership training for a couple of years, and our term was like, are you available to hold a bucket for me? Because also asking the other person permission, if I'm going to emotionally vomit, do you have space to hold that right now? So
I love that. That was such a great visual just now. Yeah, that's fantastic. But I think also sometimes, and tell me if you agree with this, sometimes women, when they are going through something horrible or, difficult, even let's say, even within the marriage with a partner, sometimes maybe they have had a bad day at work or something, a parent is sick or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And they're going through something really difficult, and they tend to, and I think you alluded to this earlier, they tend to feel maybe some shame over feeling that way. So again, it comes to the communication. So they don't say to their partner, they maybe just kind of be quiet and draw inward. And then I think that also creates issues, because the men really sometimes, and again, not to generalize, but I mean, a lot of men don't know what to do with that. Like, what's wrong? Why are you being so quiet? And I know at least that's how I used to be. I used to just, rather than saying something because I didn't want Dr. Fix-It to come along and tell me all the things I needed to do in order to fix the problem, I would just zip it and not say anything. And then that built not only my frustration that I was already feeling and made that worse, but it also built resentment. Yeah. But I was doing that. It wasn't his fault. I was doing that because, I wasn't communicating what was going on and just saying, hey, I just want quiet. And sometimes we need that, whether women, men, whatever. Sometimes we just need that space, like you said. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree. In the past, I absolutely would suppress and repress my emotions, not let anything be shown to anyone. Until I learned that's not the healthiest way to handle things. Yeah. And then I started, practicing being emotionally vulnerable and sharing what was going on. And yeah, it is almost like this trial and error of figuring out what works and what doesn't. What do I need to communicate? What is supportive to communicate? And yeah, so much comes down to communication and and really landing the communication, being clear in your communication, being loving in the communication, and being honest in communication. And I'm still learning how to do that well.
We all are.
We all. It's I think one of the reasons why we're here is relationships are our biggest teachers. And so, learning how to do that well and how to communicate well to the other person and in a way that's going to land for them. But yeah, I agree with you. Being able to say I need a minute. Can you just give me a couple of minutes of silence? Or there's something that's bothering me. Can I talk to you about it? Or when are you available to talk about it? Mm-hmm. And for me, oftentimes, and still sometimes now, it's some of the things that are difficult for me to discuss, what's underneath that is one, feeling my emotions are too much. right? Like I'm feeling too much, like I'm making too much out of something. And two, there's absolutely a fear of abandonment. Like if I share this, are they going to leave? And so I get to recognize that and then choose how to.
Do you think that those things come from nature, nurture? I mean, because I know I've heard that from other women too, afraid to say it because, he's going to leave me or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think some of that probably can come from what we were taught, how we were raised, right? Society, culture, religion, family. But I don't know. I mean, again, this is when you go through divorce, as you know, it's such a process to really learn more about yourself. And a lot of these things will come up so that in future relationships, hopefully you can learn some things you'll be able to improve upon, that'll make the communication better.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And I think it's both nature and nurture. And when I think of, when I say it's both, I think there's a lot of generational.
I do too.
Things that we have inherited across, from generations before us, that have just been passed down.
Generational baggage.
Yeah, a lot of baggage. And then, of course, what we witness as kids. Our subconscious mind, we're super programmable between the ages of 0 to 7. So it starts when we're in the womb. And up to 7 years old is when we are the most programmable and suggestible. So the way we see the world now is based on how we experienced it as a child and how we interpreted things as a child, based on, the adult figures around us. And so I absolutely think a big part of that is, early childhood, what we witnessed, what we observed, and how as young children we interpreted it. Oftentimes we could have made it mean something completely different, but it's how we experienced it as a kid that really sets the programs for how we live our life now until we bring awareness to them and start to reprogram.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And it's just so fascinating how we evolve and what we learn. And I always say every one of these situations is a learning experience. And so instead of getting frustrated, if you got divorced and get frustrated about that relationship, learn from it, because it's going to shape you and mold you so that you can be a better version of you and attract not that same partner again, but the person who's going to be attracted to this higher version of yourself. So I love that. Yeah. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about, what can a woman do if she has a friend or a loved one who wants to give her advice, but not support her ability to make her own decisions? I've had entire podcasts on this, but I think it's really important to talk about that in this space as well. Because, we all have people who we love, and it can be an aunt or a best friend or a cousin or whatever, your next door neighbor. And they do love you, they love you, but sometimes they want to just you should do this. You should do that. You shouldn't do that. And I think especially when you're going through this divorce process, that you need to be able to figure these things out based on what you feel and what you learn about yourself, right? So what can someone do in that situation?
This is one of my favorite questions, honestly. I've made some videos about it too, because one of my biggest lessons going through the divorce process, and even before the process started, leading up to it, was learning to trust myself and not seeking the opinions of others. And the decision to end a marriage, or, really any big decision, the decision to move or the decision to quit your job or whatever it may be, those are big decisions. And honestly, they're decisions that only you can make. It's a lesson in learning to trust yourself and knowing what is best for you. And also for me, being willing to risk, okay, if the decision didn't turn out to be quote unquote right, that I can choose again. Maybe there's no wrong decision, because that was one of my biggest fears, is making a wrong decision.
Yeah.
So there were people in my life during this process and leading up to this process that I intentionally didn't talk to, or not talk too much, because even though well-intentioned, I knew how the conversation would go and that it would not be supportive. And so people that maybe don't have that level of emotional intelligence, don't know how to have difficult conversations, or just sit with someone and let them share without, needing to offer advice, you get to choose like what level of conversation you have with them. And if you are opening up to someone and being very vulnerable and sharing a lot of your emotions, and you're met with unsolicited advice or something that feels like judgment, or their opinions, which you didn't ask for, you can choose to say something and set a boundary. Something like, I really value your care and your concern, and right now what I need most is someone to just listen and hold space for me, and trust that I'll find my way. Trust that I'll figure it out. But I just want you to listen right now.
Yeah.
And not everyone knows how to hold space, and that's okay. If that's not something that they are really able or equipped to do, then again, the power is in your hands. It's your choice what level of engagement you have with them and what you choose to tell them.
Right.
But I think setting boundaries in those situations is really important to protect your peace.
Yes, 100% true. And I'm sure you have probably went through the same, but when I was going through my divorce, there were a few people who, I couldn't set boundaries with, because they say they would abide by my wishes to just, listen and be there. And if I had questions, I would ask them, and I would be very happy to get their opinion. But until I asked, I didn't want to have opinions, because I needed to figure out what I needed from myself. And a couple people, I had to let go. And there's different, obviously, I've had a whole podcast on letting go, but there are different levels of letting go. You can tell somebody, look, I'm going to reach back out to you when I'm in a better place. Right now I need to go through what I'm going through. And, if the boundaries don't work, and you can try that. But there were a couple people that I had to just cut off. And the interesting thing was, one in particular was a friend of mine, and I loved this person very much. And when I said to her that we need to take a break in the friendship, because and I felt this like weight off my shoulders, which was crazy, because there was this kind of this negativity sometimes when I spoke with this person that I could feel when I got off the phone, even though I was trying to be really positive and happy. And I knew that I couldn't have that infusing my coming in inside me and getting in the way of what I was working through. So that was a really hard thing to do. And I've had some clients that have been really scared and really to do that. Especially if it's, like Aunt Sally or even your mom. Right.
If it's family.
And that's really hard. And family can be there can be so much friction. Because like you said, there's a lot of shame and guilt when it comes to divorce for many people. And that all comes from the fact that, society, family, culture, religion tells us we're going to get married and we're going to have a white picket fence and we're going to stay married forever and have 2 kids. And so there's a lot of shame. And especially there's some cultures where it's not even, some that they don't allow it, some that they just shun it, some where people are actually afraid that their family is going to never speak to them again. They get divorced, and those are bigger choices, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the letting go and that whole thing is I think one of the most difficult things that you need to deal with. But I also think it also makes you really strong. Whatever your decision is,
it does. Yeah, I would agree with you, because those are big choices. It takes a lot of courage to set boundaries, especially with people that are close to you, like family or really close friends. And, like you, I moved through so much shame navigating a divorce because it was frowned upon, greatly frowned upon. So there was a lot of feelings of failure, feelings like I'm a bad person, and all of this that came up that I got to move through. And again, that's where it goes back to surrounding yourself with the support, the right support, to remind you who you are when you forget, is one of the most important things. And I actually heard a quote today, just like perfect timing for this. It was by Esther Perel. And she said, boundaries are not walls. They are bridges that guide others into how to love you well. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges that guide others into how to love you well. And I love that so much because when you set a boundary, you're showing others how to treat you. And I do a lot of work in the manifestation space as well. And I'm a big believer that how we treat ourselves is how other people are going to treat us, because we're teaching others how to treat us by the way we treat ourselves. So when we set boundaries, that is a way that we are valuing ourselves, honoring ourselves, respecting ourselves, loving ourselves, and it's guiding others into how to love you well. And if the other person pulls away from that or is triggered by that, that's not on you. Right. That's not on you. And that's something that they get to move through in their journey. But just remember, if someone can't honor that boundary or can't hear it or accept it, that's not a reflection of your worth. That's a reflection of their readiness, and not everyone is ready.
Yeah. And that quote was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful and perfect, like you said. And I agree. All of this really does come down to our self-worth. And when we know what we want and we love ourselves, and we are not afraid, even though we may not be happy in doing so, in setting boundaries or even letting someone go, we are putting our self-worth first. Yeah. And others see that, they notice that. It's almost like if a woman or a person walked up to a podium to speak to a group of people, and you could feel the lack of confidence, you're not so much going to be pulled into whatever it is they're saying, because you can feel it, right? I mean, you can sense that. But if they walk up there and they're like, okay, they might be scared out of their mind to speak in front of a large group. But if you could feel that confidence, like, hey, I'm going to talk about this and I can share this with you, and yeah. It's a whole different experience. So it's the same thing with the self-worth. And it's kind of like the same thing when you start dating after divorce and you have that confidence. And that's why I always tell people, don't date right after divorce. You have to go through the process first, right? You have to wait till you have built yourself up and develop the self-worth, and you will be amazed because you will attract a completely different partner. So anyway, I love all that advice on just how to help yourself be surrounded by the right people, because it really makes a big difference.
It really does. Yeah. Find your community, find your people, and it doesn't have to be huge. It could be 2 to 3 people. It could be 5 or 6, but just having those people that you can go to. And like you said, doing the inner work. Leading up to my divorce, and then the full year after my divorce, really diving into so much self-work, self-love, self-transformation, really healing myself so that I, was becoming the version that I want to be and showing up and creating the life I want to create. But I got to go through the grieving process. I got to move through the hurt. I got to be in the messy middle and really do the inner work to heal.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And as did I. And I think that's just the beauty of it is, and people always say, well, how long is it going to take? Or, and it's just something that you have to enjoy the process, because the process, from the process, I always say it's the name of my healing programs, it's you emerge as a butterfly. It's like you go into this little cocoon or chrysalis, and you do all your magic in there, and then you come out and you have wings. And if you do it right, and there's no
no two people are going to have the same journey, right? But if you do it right for you, you'll feel it in here. You'll feel that you're a different person. You'll feel the joy vibrating throughout your whole body, which is just an incredible experience, as I'm sure you know. So
absolutely. It's amazing. It really is. And yeah, I would often tell myself, especially when it came to like dating again, I was in no hurry to start dating again. And I just kept telling myself, I'll know when I know. I'll know when I know.
And you do.
And I did. All of a sudden, one day, I was like, I'm ready.
I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked that question. Like, when should I date? When will I know? And I'm just like, I promise you, you will know. It's just all of a sudden one day you're going to go, I think I'm ready. And So back to this women and women thing. So I think it's really magical for women to share their stories. Like just you and I talking here about our own experiences going through the healing work. I think that that's just something that is so helpful to other women, and especially with the people that they love. So if you have somebody that you trust and somebody that is a good listener and helps you in the ways you need help, and you can just share stories with them, but I do caution in this situation, because I have talked to some women who don't really have women connections that they can share with. And so they'll say, oh, well, I can find these groups. I say, be very careful with the groups, especially the online groups, because I'm a member of probably 30 or 40 of them just to watch this process. And a lot of them there's a lot of negativity. So you go on some of these groups and there's spouse bashing, which, that doesn't help anybody. It just makes you angry and stressed, and it makes you have resentment. And that's not what you need when you're healing, right? So you want to realize that the person that's no longer your spouse also has their own story. And while you might not agree with their story and they might not agree with your story, and you might have totally different stories of, the demise and all that, it doesn't really matter. But what matters is that you learn to accept and appreciate that they have their own story. And bashing them, especially if you have kids, is just a no-no.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with the sharing stories. And I think it requires a lot of wisdom and discernment in terms of when to share and who to share it to. I know for me, there were a lot of things I did that were very healing during the process. Dancing is one of them. I love to dance. That really helped me move a lot of my emotions and process. But another thing was writing. And so I journaled a lot during the process. And it was a way that I could vent out my anger, my frustration, anything that was like that victim mentality, because I did not go through the process like high and mighty at all. Like there were many times where I was in very much victim mentality of like guilt, shame, blame, and resentment and all of these things, which are victim and not being responsible. And so I would write about it to myself. I didn't share that. I did have a couple of friends that I would talk through things with, and, they'd be like, that sounds like fear is talking, and things like someone that can actually like hear that and is at that level. But I would often just write about it to myself and not do anything with it. Until I got to a place where I was back in that higher level of consciousness, living and being from a place of responsibility. I am responsible for it all. I, create my reality and that sort of mindset, to where I felt like I could share parts of my story, and what I chose to share was up to me. And I remember sharing, I did a live masterclass a year ago, and I shared just a small piece. It was actually one of my journal entries. It was very empowering, I would say. And I shared that, and sharing that for the first time felt really vulnerable. And, but it also felt really good, because I wanted to share in a way that was empowering and not victim, and not bashing anyone, not blaming anyone, but just a message of empowerment. And I think when you're doing that, that's when a story can really be helpful to someone else, can really be supportive to someone else, because sharing stories in that way of almost like the hero's journey of this is what I went through. And now look where I am. And I learned all of these lessons during the process. I'm a better person from going through this experience. I'm living the highest vision of my life after going through this. Like sharing those types of stories really does break shame in people. It can just cut through shame like a knife. And then it's also going to really cultivate healing and connection and relatability and just this, again, empowerment of like whoever is receiving that story saying, oh my God, like I so relate to that. And this gives me the courage and the confidence to know that I'm going to be okay. And I can do this too. So,
yeah. So you're like a soul sister. It sounds like we had similar experiences. I've always written since I was a kid, and I love writing, and that really helped me too. Yeah. And obviously, I started a blog, and obviously that became a book. And so that was my story. And I was always a very private person. I mean, I never shared anything personal, like online or anything. And then for me to put that out there was also a little bit intimidating, but I knew after I'd been doing a blog for many, many months that this could actually help people. If it helps one person, I'm going to be happy. So it's a wonderful thing to share. And also in writing, because some people will tell me, I don't really want to write. And I'll say, well, you can, record into your phone and then, into a note and then print it out and put those into a notebook. But the beautiful thing about that, at least for me, and I'm sure you feel the same, is when I was going through my healing process, when I looked back on some of the things, because do you have those days? We all have hard days. I'm having a hard day, or maybe I'm going back a little bit. I'm feeling victim-y, whatever. And that's when I would read back from the start. And then I'd say, oh my goodness, I've come so far. And I'd feel so good. So even though sometimes, like you said, you're in that messy middle and you feel like there's so much work, I need to keep swimming faster, I need to get out. But when you look back at what you had experienced before, you'll see how far you've come. And aside from sharing with others, I think it's like sharing with yourself something you may not have remembered writing, or you may not have remembered standing that day in those shoes. And to be able to read that is beautiful. And that's why I always advocate for journaling, for writing, whatever way someone wants to do it. It's just a beautiful thing.
It is. It's so beautiful. I've gone back and read through some of my journal entries, and there are some where, like you, like I'll read it and be like, wow, I have come so far. I didn't realize it. Like, look at where I am now. Yeah. And then there's other ones that I'll read where I was like in a really good space when I wrote a particular entry, and I'll read it and I'll be like, wow, Jen, that was amazing. You're so wise,
right.
And like it supported for me to read it now. And so, it is neat to go back and read some of those entries. Yeah.
Well, I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I don't know if there's anything else you want to share about women, female relationships, and the importance of those relationships when we're going through something like this. Go for it if there's anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I would just say, like, if you don't have that circle of women or those couple of friends that you really like trust and feel like you can be open and vulnerable with, like, prioritize that. They're out there. I've been in a couple of women's circles online that were super supportive because we lived all over the place. And even having an online community, I mean, the level of connection and depth that can still happen in an intimate women's circle, even when it's online, it's incredible. And so if you don't have those people in your local area or you haven't found them yet, then explore options online, because I think there's so many women out there just really hungry for that level of connection. And so let's create more.
Yeah, that's great advice. And there are so many people that do those kinds of women's circles online. And if you need any help in finding out where to look, you can contact Jen, you can contact me. I mean, it doesn't really matter where you are, obviously, because it's online, but you do want to find someone who facilitates this and knows what they're doing. And there are so many wonderful women out there who do host these. So Thank you, Jen, for all of your great advice and your stories. And it's been fabulous to listen to. It's always wonderful for me to listen to someone who's been through the same process that I talk about on this podcast all the time, and hope that your stories and my stories help others and inspire them to want to dive deeper into the healing process. So.
Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. Well, it was a pleasure being on your show. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you're welcome. And I will put all of the links to contact Jen, where you can find her, up on the screen for those of you who are watching. For those of you who are listening, they'll be in the show notes. So please reach out to her with any questions, or if you want to discuss anything. And thank you so much again for being with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah. And one last thing, if you like this content, please like it, comment, share, subscribe, turn on notifications. All of your love that pours in on these episodes makes me excited to keep finding wonderful guests like Jen to have here, so that you can learn and heal. So thank you so much for your support.